The fallout for the BBC and the ABC continues over their misleading and biased reporting of the Gaza war and, of course, of US President Donald Trump. As you know, the Director General of the BBC and the news chief resigned in the wake of journalistic scandals, in particular the recent revelations about how the BBC chopped up Trump's Washington speech on January the 6th, 2021.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Now, as you know, I revealed on this program that our own ABC had committed an almost identical sin, cutting up the same speech in a very similar way when it produced a similar story for Four Corners covering the same events and trying to push the same narrative that the president instigated the Capitol Hill riots.
Such is the level of fear that in recent weeks, serious people here have been using the dread phrase civil war. Tonight, how a defeated, disgraced and now twice impeached president brought US democracy to the brink of destruction.
Wouldn't work without the scary music, would it? Liberal Senator Sarah Henderson has demanded answers from the ABC and announced on this program last night that she'll push for a Senate inquiry. But the ABC has denied any problem. The reporter you saw delivering that anti-Trump piece about the Capitol Hill riot was Sarah Ferguson. She's the same reporter who produced the three-part Story of the Century series running the wild, incorrect and discredited conspiracy theory that Donald Trump was first elected thanks to Russia's Vladimir Putin. Yeah, Ferguson certainly has a strong dose of Trump derangement syndrome. And she's not the only one. Last night I showed you other examples of ABC coverage that tried to make it look like Trump instigated the violence on Capitol Hill. Another one has come to light now, and it might be the worst of all. Have a look at this from Four Corners and Mark Willesee in 2024.
Refusing to accept his defeat at the hands of Joe Biden, Trump told his supporters to march on the US Capitol.
We fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
The meaning, the narrative is clear. And it is, of course, a misrepresentation of the entirety of the Trump speech, where he said stuff like this.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Anyway, keeping all this in mind, who do you think the ABC would choose to probe the issue of the BBC and its deceptive, misleading edits of Donald Trump? Yeah, you guessed it. They are shameless.
US President Donald Trump is threatening to sue the BBC over the way they edited his notorious speech delivered ahead of the Capitol riot on January the 6th.
Yeah, it's the reporter who compiled a similar story to the BBC report and who delivered a similarly deceptive edit of the very same interview to advance the very same narrative. And she is the one to discuss the fallout at the BBC. And her chosen expert is another Green Left journalist, the former editor of The Guardian newspaper, no less. Listen to the questioning and the astonishing claim within it.
In normal circumstances, you would expect an apology about this edit, which linked together two parts of Donald Trump's speech, but didn't materially misrepresent the tone of that speech. Again, the question is, why would that lead to the resignation of such a powerful figure? What's going on?
That deceptive cut, you saw it moments ago, it didn't materially misrepresent the tone of the president's speech. It changed the meaning. It literally changed the meaning of what the president said. And Ferguson dismisses it in this fashion. Is Ferguson defending the BBC here? Or is she using this interview to indirectly defend her own dodgy edit of the same speech? To be fair, she does later admit the edit was a very serious mistake. But honestly, to say it didn't change the tone is just denying the indefensible. This discussion focused heavily on BBC critics, suggesting the BBC was being unfairly targeted. It also tried to make excuses.
Well, I think there had been a series of mishaps. The BBC puts out something like 23,000 hours of content over the course of a year, and there are bound to be mistakes.
Well, it wasn't a mistake or a mishap. That's a complete mischaracterisation. This was a deliberate editing of a speech to create a false impression. It was a travesty, not a mistake. And as you know, Ferguson and the ABC did pretty much the same thing. This interview seemed to be based on fears that the public broadcasters in the UK and here in Australia might face some accountability for their misadventures.
You refer to poor governance in the BBC, but from our perspective, I think we're interested to know if we are looking at a bigger narrative that is aimed at public broadcasting as a concept in the United Kingdom.
I bet you're interested in that. I bet everyone at the ABC is worried that accountability might one day arrive, which is why the ABC is nervously watching what happens in Britain.
Unfortunate episode. We're obviously, as a public broadcaster, watching closely. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Alan, especially at short notice. Thank you very much.
It goes without saying, of course, that Ferguson did not mention her own report or the parallel controversy about the ABC's editing of Trump. Yet still, it gets worse, because not only is the ABC in denial about its transgressions, with ABC Managing Director Hugh Marks defending the Ferguson editing of Trump, but according to a report in the Sydney Morning Herald today, the ABC is now playing the victim. The Herald quotes an internal email dismissing my revelations about the doctoring of the Trump speech, and then adding this: the opportunistic attempt to seek to engineer a similar crisis here to the BBC's is transparent and doesn't stack up, said the news boss, Justin Stevens. Alongside legitimate criticism, both organisations are subjected to sustained and inaccurate campaigns that seek to chip away at the public's belief and trust in what we provide as a public service. The nerve of these people to play victim. This is a week in which they've had to apologise for deliberately doctoring an image on insiders, a bit of fake news that created an anti-coalition front page that never existed, as well as have their dodgy editing of the Trump speech revealed, along with the extra example I've just shown you tonight. And they say we're the ones undermining their trust with audiences. A little self-examination might be in order, comrades. Instead of dealing with their transgressions and improving their standards, they lash out at their critics and they play the hapless victim. The billion-dollar public broadcasting behemoth as the victim. Get a grip. That Senate inquiry promoted by Senator Sarah Henderson could hardly come soon enough.